Hello, it's your GenX Big Sister here. And today I received my first ever topic request from a viewer. So a special shout out to at Piskian Beauty 2503. I'm assuming it's a she, asked to hear more about my perimenopause and menopausal journey. So buckle up, buckle in. If this is not your cup of tea, if this is not something you want to hear about, then scroll on by. First, let me start with a little bit of context before we get into perimenopause and menopause. I had issues in my 20s, actually earlier than that. I suffered from endometriosis for many, many years, undiagnosed endometriosis. And based on heavy periods, lots of pain. I mean, I had months where I was completely incapacitated because of pain and nausea. I would get nauseous because the pain was so bad. So had that for many years and worked around it as we women do. It didn't get diagnosed until my late 20s when I had to go to the emergency room because I was in such pain. And it turned out, after lots and lots of back and forth, turned out that the endometriosis had destroyed one of my ovaries. It had like latched onto it, and there was like a cyst around it, whatever, big whatever, and ended up having to get my ovary removed. I think I was maybe 30 at that point. So I had my ovary removed. Nobody warned me that I would experience some menopausal symptoms at that time. So that was traumatic. I got the night sweats and things like that at that time. And again, I didn't talk to a doctor about it. I just barreled through it. The surgery itself really sucked because I had got my left ovary removed, and they assured me that the scar would be teeny, teeny, tiny. And it turned out the scar went all the way across. Like I almost feel like they went on the wrong side and then corrected themselves. But I never got confirmation of that. So that sucked. And that was early 30s. And plus, while I was dealing with what I've talked about in previous videos in my 30s, where, the clock was ticking when it came to like, I wanted to find a partner. I wanted to figure out what I was doing with starting a family, if I was going to do that, yada, yada. So that was most of my 30s. Late 30s, in hindsight, I know that I was having perimenopausal symptoms. Those symptoms were that my periods got even heavier than they had been. I had, in one case, a really massive blood clot, and clotting was kind of common. And my periods ended up being very erratic and unpredictable, and usually coming no more than 3 weeks apart. And again, I went in for my yearly exams. I told them what was going on, but nothing was said to me. And I just thought it was just one of the things you just need to deal with. So I powered through and suffered through that. A lot of painful years. That was a tough time. I think, let's see, what other perimenopausal? I do think that the libido situation is huge in perimenopause. Mine was out of control, like more higher than it had ever been, crazy, crazy. So yes, that can be a good thing, but it can also not be, because it does cloud things and mess things up a little bit. And if you're not married and in a stable, healthy, or in a stable, healthy relationship, it can be a bit challenging. But that definitely happened in my early 30s into my my late 30s into my early 40s. I also was having weight struggles differently than I had. I had, put on weight before and then was able to take it off like really quickly. I stopped being able to do that, and the weight was starting to distribute itself a little differently in my early 40s. So that was different. And then I also experienced my first ever panic attack. I've spoken about this publicly before. I won't get into all the details of the situation, but as someone who is, I'm a professionally trained actress, public speaker. I'm comfortable with the camera, I'm comfortable being in front of people. And I was doing a presentation in an interview process for a job that I wanted to a panel of people, and had a panic attack unlike anything I had experienced before. And definitely, I'm sure it was a contributing factor to me not getting the job, because it was a pretty high level stressful job. And it probably gave the impression that I can't handle stress very well. So that was the first time I'd ever experienced anything like that. So that shook me. And I had a little bit of anxiety through that time. And in the years after that, the anxiety started to get worse and worse and worse. I was not somebody who typically had anxiety, but I was becoming anxious over different things. Mid 40s was when I had my miscarriage, which I've mentioned before. I don't know how that impacted my hormones and my other symptoms and things that were happening. I just know emotionally I was all over the place. Like, I felt like I was PMSing, like really bad PMSing at random times, throughout my 40s. It was really, really hard to pinpoint where the emotional roller coaster was going to land. And let's see what happened. So 40s into the late 40s. So by the time I got to my 50s, so I was 50 when I had my last period. So that's when that's menopause, and I was postmenopausal after that. So the symptoms that I experienced at that time was consistent anxiety and stress and worry, like intrusive thoughts, and depression that took a lot of effort to stay ahead of, and sleep. Okay, so the sleep issues, I never had problems falling asleep. I had problems staying asleep. I would wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning every night and try to get back to sleep, but it would be intermittent sleep for the rest of the night. And I'm sure that affected, my energy and, everything else. At that time too, from late 40s into my early 50s, I was massively dealing with the grief over not having children. I would say it became like a biological thing in my 40s, like where I never had a biological compulsion before that to have a child. There was, I would feel the flutters when I would see babies or hold babies and things like that. So I did have a little bit of that, like the romanticized part of, wanting babies. But in terms of like that strong biological, I have to have one, that didn't happen until my 40s. I did have an older female mentor who warned me about that when she was in that age range, and I was about 10, 12 years younger than her. She warned me, she says, it's almost like your body knows this is the last hurrah, and it like pushes you to want to procreate. Because she had grown kids and there was like no reason in the world that she should want to have another baby. And then all of a sudden, in those last few years of, having a period, like all of a sudden she just had this urge again. She resisted the urge, but she warned me that would happen, and it absolutely happened. And so that was happening late 40s, early 50s, hit menopause, sleep problems, and libido just disappeared. that definitely things were not as, there was a lot of vaginal dryness. So it wasn't it was painful, sex was painful. And so that led to like just wanting it less and less and less. So I just pushed through. I didn't take anything for it. This was only, I'm 59. I hit menopause at 50. So that's 9 years ago. They still weren't really talking about it the way they're talking about it now. And they weren't offering up any real solutions. And they absolutely were not in favor of hormone therapy because of the previous reports on that. So that only has been the last few years that those things have gotten better. So since I left my job 3 years ago and I went on my sabbatical, one of the things as part of my healing process in that sabbatical was to dive into my own research about menopause, perimenopause, what was happening with my body, in my body. I was concerned about the weight gain. I was concerned about the sexual appetite or lack thereof. I was concerned about the sleep issues, like all of it. And it took me quite a few doctors. I think I went to 2 doctors, and then my third doctor finally prescribed hormones for me. So I had estrogen cream to help with the vaginal dryness and libido, and then put on estrogen tablets to take care of the other symptoms. And that's only been a little over a year. This was the end of 2024, so slightly more than a year ago. What have I noticed since then? All right. So the first thing I noticed was sleeping through the night, which I still do. I get a full 7-8 hours of sleep now, which is wonderful. I can't sleep in the way I used to when I was younger. I can't do those long sleep in days, and I don't necessarily wake up feeling quite as refreshed as I used to when I was younger, but I am sleeping much better and I feel the effects of that. It temporarily calmed my nerves. So I noticed for several months, that I wasn't suffering from this nonsensical anxiety over crazy things. I wasn't having that happen. I say temporarily because I still have situational anxiety. For example, my Thailand trip triggered, if you followed me during that time, I was an anxious mess for that and had to work through it. So it didn't like eliminate all my anxiety, but it definitely softened and got rid of sort of the day by day ridiculous anxiety that I was feeling. So it's helped that. The estrogen cream absolutely helps with the vaginal dryness challenge. It had been to the point where I had been reluctant to go to the OBGYN because exams were excruciatingly painful. I did finally find a doctor who, when I expressed this to her, and when I expressed it to her, I started crying, not realizing how emotional I felt about it. But when she was committed to, finding a way for it not to be painful and to helping to take care of that challenge. So it does help with that. The downside of the cream is it's one of those things where the cream, you put it into like an applicator and you have to insert it several times a week. And that's just, I don't know, it's just a pain in the butt. And so I'm not really consistent with it. And it's the kind of thing that you have to be consistent with it. So the next time I go, I'm going to ask about, other options or other things. I don't know if there are any, but so it does do what it says, what they say it's supposed to do, which is great. It hasn't really changed. So, okay. So here's the reason why I was worried about the whole libido and making it so sex isn't painful and helping with the lubrication dryness situation. The reason for that was I didn't want to close off and shut the door once and for all forever on the possibility of partnering with somebody. And the prospect of dating while dealing with these issues was inconceivable to me. I mean, it's just not something I wanted to do. It was bad enough in my early 30s in my early 30s when I had my ovary removed and I started to experience some symptoms like night sweats and hot flashes. Dating was really difficult. I mean, night sweats meant that like you're waking up and your pajamas are soaked and your skin is clammy. And think about that. If you're like with somebody that's your new-ish relationship or whatever, it was just not fun and embarrassing. and and so fast forward ahead to recent years, I've had no desire to date, partly because of, well, there's a lot of reasons, but there's a lot of reasons why I haven't wanted to date. But one factor has been, but I don't really want to have sex. And how are you going to date and find someone who doesn't want to have sex? So I really was searching for what's going to help that. And the estrogen cream does help with that. But I have found that hasn't been enough to make me want to date or want a relationship. So I think that's on the inside. So that if that's something that I want, I gotta, do that work differently. But it does seem like it's been a biological switch that's been switched off. And again, I've mentioned the lust lens before. I'm going to talk about that again. So that has been my perimenopause menopause journey. I apologize for the TMI, but if you are in your 30s or 40s, you may be able to relate to that. The good news is that now there are more doctors that can talk about it and that can help you, but you need to do your due diligence to find out who they are. You have to really talk to them about what do they know about menopause and how can they help you. And the North American Menopause Society is a good place to start. I told you I had to go to 3 doctors until I finally got somebody that would prescribe me the hormones. That was because the first 2 said that my symptoms were not severe enough to take the risk. And and the primary thing was because I didn't mention night sweats or hot flashes. I didn't mention hot flashes to those first 2 doctors because I hadn't been having them. And then ironically, and I don't know if this is connected or not, but I know that after my second doctor and I was kind of frustrated again, there was a period of time where I started to get hot flashes again. Not a lot, not debilitating, but I was getting them. And so when I saw the 3rd doctor, I mentioned the hot flashes, and that's when she was like, "Okay, we can get this for you." So I don't know. I don't know what the challenge is. I mean, I've done my own research on the pros and cons. I do understand that there's pros and cons. I understand those that opt not to go the hormonal route, and whatever works best for you, I'm all for that. I'm sure someday I'm going to be off everything again and I'll have to figure out how to adjust. Oh, the other thing that's been rough is just how my skin has changed. I always had very oily skin and my skin has dried up, which has meant more wrinkles, more sagging, more like the skin just became looser as, really once I hit menopause. And I'm still looking for solutions on that, and I don't want to do fillers and Botox and all that. I don't really want to do plastic surgery or anything, but something I need to figure out. The other thing I want to mention is the social aspects around perimenopause and menopause. There I think even now, and I don't know if this is just my age group. I don't know if younger women, I don't know. I kind of suspect younger women may be the same because they're still, everybody's so focused on aging. And now we're like celebrating older women, but as long as they look really good. And so, what I found when I was approaching menopause, and then once I reached menopause, it did start to get talked about more amongst peers, but it became like a badge of honor thing all over again. A badge of honor of, oh, well, I don't have those symptoms, or oh, well, I still have my period, and oh yeah, my sex drive is through the roof, and that's awesome. I'm happy for you. And it kind of reminded me of when we were all getting our periods. I remember because I was the last girl in my social circle to get my period, and I remember the pressure and just wanting to have it so badly, and how awful I felt that all of my friends were starting to get it and I wasn't. And it feels like it's an extension of that, where now, if you're a woman who's still menstruating and you're not having symptoms, there's a bit of a badge of honor is all I can say. And it does make the rest, those of us who are suffering, feel a little less than. Although we're older, we give a little less fucks, but we still occasionally give a fuck, right? And even if we're in the we do not care club, sometimes we care. So there's that to think about. And identity, how it's attached to our identity. I did not realize how much I identified as a vibrant, attractive, sexually active woman, and how important that was to me. I didn't really realize it until it started to go away and just feeling its absence. So that's a bummer, takes some adjusting. And I have to do a video about the lust lens soon, because I don't want to leave you on this low, because the lust lens lifting is on the other side of menopause. And all of this crappy stuff that I'm talking about, it actually makes it way more worth it. So yeah. And there's also the women who say, oh, well, just be thankful you don't have to worry about your period anymore, lucky you. And well, it was lucky when you do have it, and what that means, and what that might mean to you, that you don't even realize how much it means to you. So it's something to be prepared for. Let me know if you've got any questions about anything that I talked about. This is my specific experience. Obviously, I'm not a doctor. I'm not a hormone expert. I'm not a menopause expert. And every woman's experience with this is very different. Mine's specific to me. So if you have questions and you want to know more, drop me a comment. I'm happy to oblige. Remember to like and subscribe to this channel. You definitely want to hear about the lust lens, right? So you have to come back for more. This is your GenX Big Sister signing off.